Hey, what's up everyone? Kribby here, back at it again with another episode of I Don't Hate This One So Much. Surprisingly, because this video is not going to be like the other videos, where it's going to be like, oh, I'm gonna talk about something that's really shit the whole time. No, I'm gonna be talking about something that's really shit, and something that's also good at the same time. I'm going to do a comparison of one Final Fight to another Final Fight. This will be a precursor to my 5-part series that I'm going to make on Crisis on Infinite Earths, the DC crossover that happened last year. I'm going to be comparing that to the big final fight that happened in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. These fights are very different, yet also very comparable in what they do, and one of them does it well, one of them does it really poorly. Crisis on Infinite Earths is garbage, utter garbage, and that's why I'm making a 5-part series about it. But before I did that, I wanted to make an entire video comparing these 3 fights, because Fullmetal Alchemist has a long final fight, and Crisis has 2 shorter fights that are both really shit for reasons I'm going to get into. Now, let's start, I guess. One more thing before we get in. I have a Discord server now. Yep, I made it before the last video, but like that one's kind of iffy, so I didn't know if I should have plugged it there, so I'm plugging it here instead. So join if you want. I'm probably going to be there for a lot of the time because I have no life. So yeah, see you there.
I think it's time to blow this scene.
Okay, so there are going to be some rules for this. They're pretty quick and self-explanatory, so this shouldn't take long. Basically, I can't compare how anything looks. I can't say, oh, this looks really good, or oh, this looks really bad, because that would be unfair. Fullmetal Alchemist is beautifully animated and has some of the best crisp animation I've ever seen. Meanwhile, Crisis on Infinite Earths has fucking the worst effects budget. Like, the effects budget is about as good as my effects budget, and that's saying something, because I can't really do shit. Rule number 2 is that I will be having no commentary on this is good or this is bad for the first part, because that's going to be a summary of what like happens. It's like a synopsis of the fights, and if I say, oh, this is good or oh, this is bad, that defeats the whole point of the synopsis. Third and final rule: I cannot use prior information from, say, the crossover or from the TV show itself to say, oh, the show is good, which means that the fight is good. I can use the information that the show gives us and say why the buildup might have been better, but I can't say that this fight is good because the show is better. I can't do that because that's also unfair, and I don't think that would be very helpful in criticizing the flaws of the fight itself. So those are the 3 rules that I need to follow, and yeah, let's finally get into it. Okay, so Crisis on Infinite Earth's first fight starts when the team arrives at the dawn of time. The Anti-Monitor appears and says shit about how he's inevitable, and then the heroes have a team huddle. Then they fight ghost things. They have dialogue that consists of camera cuts and it shows Oliver with the Anti-Monitor and they're talking, and then they fly up in the air and shoot lasers at each other, and Oliver says, as he shoots lasers in the sky. The ghosts disappear because of this, and the Paragons use the Book of Destiny by focusing what they're the paragon of, like hope and truth, and this works. They look at Oliver as there's an explosion while Anti-Monitor and Oliver scream. Oliver sacrifices himself for the rebirth of the universe, and he says, "Oh, but the dead are at peace. They're not real heroes. The real heroes are the ones that keep going." The impact is that this creates a new universe for the heroes to fight in for the rest of their shows. So that's Crisis Battle 1 in a very quick synopsis. The second fight in Crisis takes place on the rebooted Earth, and it actually has a plan this time. The plan is to throw this bomb at the Anti-Monitor that'll make him shrink forever. So the heroes arrive at the battle scene, and it immediately cuts to Black Lightning and Star Labs, where him, Killer Frost, and Heatwave are all fighting ghosts. The characters in the battlefield, those being like the Justice League, I guess, yell out for Oliver, and they start shooting the Anti-Monitor with lasers and batarangs and guns, but he's blocking them with a force field. The force field goes boom, and the Anti-Monitor grows. So Barry goes to build the bomb at Star Labs, and the Anti-Monitor grabs Superman. Supergirl's like, "No!" Batwoman, Alex, and other people that don't have powers are fighting ghosts again. And Supergirl looks like she's gonna sacrifice herself, but then Adam's like, "Lol, no," and gives her like the shrink bomb. He says, "Throw it like a girl," and then she throws it. It hits the Anti-Monitor, and then the ghosts disappear. The impact is there is none. There is no impact. So, I would normally have the video playing, like little clips of the episode playing, but the problem is that this video is already taken long enough to make, and I want to get this video out before May, so instead I'm just going to have it clipless. I'm sorry. Everything that I'm describing here is what actually happened, though. I promise, and you should remember this stuff. If you've never watched the show, what the fuck are you doing here? Go and watch it now. The fight starts when Ed and Al are taken to Father's room because they have committed human transmutation. Wrath and Pride force Colonel Mustang to perform human transmutation in order to become their fifth sacrifice, and he loses his eyesight. Them pinning Colonel Mustang down against his will, though, took a bunch of power from Pride, as he was probably caught in the transmutation and was affected negatively by it. Colonel Mustang got sent to Father's base, and Wrath fights Scar. We get the reveal that Mustang has lost his eyesight, and it shows the ironies of the truth and how cruel it can be through those ironies. For example, Alphonse Elric wanted to feel the warmth of his mother again, but instead of ever being able to, he got a cold body that would never be able to feel warmth again. Parallel is drawn between Wrath and Scar, where they both realize that they both are nameless. They both lost their names. And Al is at the truth. Al refuses to go back to his body in the truth because he has work to do, drawing contrast later to Al's sacrifice in the fight. This selfless act is what caused the end of the world, which is beautifully ironic. Now that Al has woken up, all Father needs to do is wait till the eclipse is right where he needs it to be. So, because of this, all the heroes have some time to fight. Ed and Al fight Pride while Mei Chang fights Father. Mei Chang gets injured and Alphonse rushes to help her. Sadly, their efforts are fruitless as Father is able to get them to fight long enough to where the eclipse happens, and he gets all of the sacrifices in order to steal all of the souls of the Amestrians. Amestris is a giant country, if you didn't know or don't remember. There's about 500,000 people there. That's a lot of souls. The father steals all of them, and he reaches the rank of God. Hohenheim, however, has an Uno reverse card and reveals that what he's been doing all these years is actually getting to know all the people in his Philosopher's Stone and getting them to help against the effort. He scattered pieces of his blood all over Amestris and has told them that when the eclipse happens, that they were going to make a reverse transmutation circle. This reverse transmutation circle gave all the souls back to the people of Amestris and weakened Father severely. So then Father decides, nope, fuck this shit, I'm out. And he leaves to go above ground. Ed and Co follow him, and then Father steals a bunch of souls from military officers. Our heroes rush to go and stop Father, but he decides to make an explosion, knocking a lot of them back and destroying a lot of Alphonse's armor. So then a bunch of the characters start fighting against Father. They start trying to beat him up, but he has his force field that's just peskily staying there. He keeps fighting people until Greed comes in and tries to kill Father. The thing is, Father was expecting this and decided to try to take Greed's Philosopher's Stone. But double twist, Greed was expecting this and thought that it was the best way to get Father's guard down, as a bunch of characters barrage him with attacks. Ed goes for a kick and he blocks it with his arm, showing that he no longer can use his alchemy. Father then has his force field to go back up, and he makes it go kaboom, and it breaks Ed's arm. Then all the people fight Father till, unfortunately, he does another explosion, knocking Ed back into a metal pole that impales him through the shoulder. Father, desperately looking for a Philosopher's Stone, starts walking towards Ed, while Alphonse yells and begs him not to steal his brother's soul. But Alphonse has an epiphany. He can give Ed his arm back if he gives his soul back to the truth. And he does just that. With Mei Chang's long-range alkahestry, she sacrifices Alphonse's soul to get Edward's arm back. Ed realizes what's happening and is enraged. He beats the ever-living shit out of Father, while everyone cheers him on. Then, Father, looking for another Philosopher's Stone, goes to Greed and tries to take his. But Greed decided that this wasn't happening today. He had already rebelled against his dad, so instead of making him a nice ultimate shield that would have covered him fully, Greed decides to make his body the weakest carbon there is. So fragile that Ed punches right through him without a second thought. Father sees this betrayal and decides that Greed has had enough time living and kills Greed. Greed has now learned that, he never wanted anything but friends, which is a nice way to close out the character of Greed. But then Ed fights Father and completely beats the shit out of him. Everyone unanimously cheers for him, and Father is now reduced to nothing. Father, the dwarf in the flask, is now taken to the Portal of Truth and is punished for his crimes. You may think that this is the end, but no, because final part of this battle is Ed trying to get Alphonse's soul back. Everyone is offering ways to do it. Ling is offering his Philosopher's Stone. Hohenheim is offering his life. Everyone wants to help, but Edward refuses until he gets his own idea. He makes a human transmutation circle and performs his last transmutation. In said transmutation, he sacrifices alchemy, his alchemic ability, in order to save Alphonse, which perfectly ties the story full circle from the very beginning. In doing so, Edward ends up saving not only Alphonse, but himself, now that he doesn't have alchemy to lead him astray, and they walk through the portal back on the other side with Alphonse's body. So now that we've finished with the synopsis, time to get into the reasons why Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood's final fight is better than both of Crysis's fights combined.
Yeah, but like, Kribby, there's a lot of like favoritism in your analysis that goes against what you were saying in rule number 1. It's like, what are you doing? You're just trying to make them look bad. I gotta speak to your manager.
I mean, there's not clear favoritism in the synopsis. I definitely did exaggerate some parts of both, but for the most part, what I said is what you get with both of them. If you thought that they sounded bad, then well, there you go. But yeah, so the progression of the fights is one of the big talking points as to why Fullmetal's is better than Crisis. You see, a fight, for it to be epic, for it to feel big, has to have a level of progression, especially if it's a final fight. Because if everything stays the same, it bores the viewer. You have nothing to show. So in Crisis, what's the big progression of the two fights? Well, in the first one, they're on like a fucking Dawn of Time. Okay, they fight ghost things. Then Oliver shoots lasers at the anti-monitor, and then they all look at the anti-monitor and Oliver, and then there's an explosion with sky lasers. My point is that there's nothing there. There's no progression. It's all the same. There's no build-up or anything in the fight. All there is the same thing over and over and over again. They're fighting ghosts. They're fighting the anti-monitor. Oh look, the anti-monitor is shooting lasers now. Oh look, Oliver's shooting lasers now. Why are they shooting lasers? Doesn't fucking matter. They're shooting lasers. It just doesn't go very well. And now, the second Crisis fight is worse. The second Crisis fight has even less progression. Because even though they have a plan this time, the progression goes, they arrive, they fight ghosts for like 2 seconds. They turn to the anti-monitor and are like, haha, fuck you, we're gonna fight you now. And they fight him, but he has a force field, and then he makes his force field go kaboom, and then he turns big. None of these things correlate with each other in a manner that makes sense. But what makes even less sense is now that he's grown, Barry goes to Star Labs to build a bomb or something that's supposed to make him shrink. But if that was the plan the entire time, why wasn't Barry there from the very beginning? The progression is flawed. You're supposed to be smart. Why are you so retarded all the time, you cuckold? Which makes the fight seem unrealistic. You see, stakes are built on cause and effect, and for cause and effect to make sense. You can't have stakes if what you're showing doesn't make sense. So the fact that Barry just runs to Star Labs after they were already there just because they wanted Barry to be in the big cool like fucking shot of them walking just doesn't work well. It doesn't work. It just does not. Then Adam brings the shrink bomb and throws it at the anti-monitor, and he shrinks, and then all the ghosts disappear for some reason. Don't ask me why they disappear. I don't know. They disappear, I guess, because he shrunk, but he's not dead. He just is shrinking. The ghost should still be there. It doesn't make sense. Now, in comparison, Fullmetal's progression is stellar. The show progresses from being inside of Father's lair all the way to being outside with Alphonse sacrificing his body, and the progression makes sense. All the character decisions make sense. I can't go in detail fully, obviously, because that would take forever, but just as an example, when Mei Chang and Alphonse are having a little bit of a quarrel over whether Mei Chang should sacrifice Al's soul, both of their character decisions make sense. The stakes are there because we know that Mei Chang likes Al, and we know that Al needs his brother to survive. So the stakes are there. The character motives are there. We have stakes, and those stakes are built on the progression of the moment, with Ed being knocked back into a metal pole and cause and effect. Progression. So, in that way, at least, Fullmetal gets 1 point and Crisis gets 0. Like, the rest of this fucking thing. Sacrifices are a vital part in both of these fights. They're the way that the fight is won in both instances. Granted, the sacrifice plays a different role in both fights, but for the most part, you can argue both fights are won through one sacrifice. In Fullmetal, that sacrifice is Alphonse Elric when he sacrifices his soul to give Edward his arm back so that he can fight Father one-on-one. This sacrifice is great. The way that the moments leading up to the sacrifice are filmed is absolutely stunning, with Ed's realization of what Al is planning to do being kind of haunting in a way. Everything stops, which signifies how much Ed cares for Al. And then, when the whole sacrifice actually happens, Ed is enraged. He goes and kicks the shit out of Father because of the loss that he is, well, that it appears that he had just endured. So I would say that this is a much better sacrifice than Crisis, which has a very bad sacrifice. One, I don't really know what the sacrifice is. Like, I understand that Green Arrow died, but I'm not sure why. What was the point of that? What was the idea there? Because it seems like he just kind of died because they needed him to die, and that's not a very satisfying sacrifice. With Alphonse Elric's death, there's a clear reason why he did that. It's to get Ed's arm back. But in Crisis, he just kind of stands there and looks at the sky and shoots lasers, and I guess that killed him. It doesn't make any sense, and it's really dumb. But yeah, that's sacrifice. That's all I really can say about this category. But it's a big reason why Crisis's final fight is so much worse, is that the sacrifice is so flawed and so meaningless that I still have no idea what the sacrifice even entailed. There's nothing there. So that leaves the score at 2-0. The final thing we have to establish is the impact of Crisis and Fullmetal's fights. The impact of Crisis's fight should have been huge. The impact should have been immense. The conflict involves millions of universes, like an infinite amount that could be lost. That is a thriving source of conflict. That is intense. But what ends up being the problem is that the way that they shoot this intensity is very bad, even from the start of the crossover. Now, I'm not going to break the rule, I promise, but I do want to mention how even at the start of the crossover, the stakes were only built up by showing characters that either you know from previous stuff or you have no idea about dying, and that's it. That's how they built the stakes. We don't care about these characters unless you've seen every piece of DC media that there is, and most people haven't done that, so there's no reason to care. But going back to the final fight, the real reason why this is such a terrible impact is because nothing changes. In the first Crisis fight, there's very little impact other than the new universe being created, which is big. That is, I'll give them that. That is a good final impact. If that was going to be the end of the crossover, would be the new universe coming to life, and so like that would have been a good impact. But the second fight is much worse, because while the first fight had the impact of Oliver dying, the new universe, the end of Anti-Monitor, even though that's like not even true, the second fight only has one of those things, and that's the end of the Anti-Monitor, and that's even up for debate because he's just kind of infinitely shrinking. But like, here's the problem, is that the first two, which those being the new universe and Oliver, those are just gone because no one dies and nothing of impact happens. You could have completely cut out this final fight and nothing would have changed. It would have been the exact same thing. We would have stayed exactly where we left off before. In Fullmetal, however, The final fight has a huge impact, not only by showing everything that could have been lost, by literally losing those things until they're regained, but also through the immense amount of character development and growth that happens, and you feel loss for these characters. Alphonse losing his metal body is incredible. It's an incredible impact. Greed dying is also an incredible impact. This person that we've come to appreciate more, given more time with him, is now dead. That has an impact. Not only that, but the end of the father is also an impact, and Ed getting Al's body back is entirely up to this fight. If you cut out this fight, this story would be incomplete. Everything would have to be rearranged or changed for us to get to the same place that we are now. So the impact is immense, and the fight was necessary. But you just can't say the same thing about Crisis, because the fight isn't necessary. There's no impact. The only impact is that Oliver died and they made a new universe, and then the second battle, the only impact is that the Anti-Monitor is dead, which he was technically already dead before, so that could even be debated. So again, this point goes to Fullmetal. So there we end it. Crisis had 0 points and Fullmetal Alchemist had 3. Who would have guessed? So that was the Fullmetal Alchemist versus Crisis on Infinite Earths comparison. This video took me so long to make because it was right smack dab in the middle of finals week. It was in the middle of May, which was when I had to take my AP tests, all of my reading and writing and all that shit tests, all of that. Homework, I'm in a very rigorous school, so it took me a really long time. I think I started this project in March, and it's May now, but it's so glad to finally see it. I'm so happy to finally see it come close together and finally under wraps so that I can finally publish it, because damn it, this was a long one. But it was a necessary one because I think that Fullmetal Alchemist's fight is very good, and it's kind of been slipping in recent conversation, and I think that it really deserves more praise. Like, people love it, but no one's been talking about it for a while now, and I think that people should really start talking about it again because it's a very good fight. And I also wanted to start talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths because it's absolute shit. My Crisis on Infinite Earth series probably won't come for another long time. I wanted to do it right after this video, but I'm kind of CW'd out because of fucking idiocracy that's happening there. Like, such stupidity that it kind of hurts. So I don't even want to talk about it. So we're just gonna save that for another time. Anyways, so if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, do all those all that shebang. I appreciate every single one of you, and yeah, you can leave a comment. I'll probably respond to it no matter how late I do it. It's usually in the next day. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.